Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to another edition of Labor Talk. Joining me today is Rick Torres, President and Founder of Permanent Solutions Labor Consultants. Also with me, Ahmed Santana, the Vice President of Labor Consulting Division for Permanent Solutions, and I being your host today, Dan Block, Vice President of Client Relations. Let's go ahead and get things started, gentlemen. You ready?
Yes.
Today's topic, we're actually going to be discussing the particulars concerning deauthorization and decertification, a misconception by employees' parts when they choose or they're wishing to desire the consideration to join a union, how decertification is played both as a union tactic as well as the reality concerning collective bargaining. In addition to that, we also will be discussing those long-term employees who have been part of a collective bargaining agreement for years upon years, and how they must consider pondering the idea of removing the union too. Rick, let's go ahead and get started with you. Let's talk about the general principles of decertification and why this is so hard for many employees to understand when they consider the idea of joining the union in the first place.
Well, Dan, it's important to understand that when there's a union organizing campaign, I mean, first of all, who knows how long the union has been talking to the workers prior to a petition being filed. But they're on an emotional high. They don't want, the union's goal is to put blinders on the employees that they're going after, almost like a horse running down, in a race. All we think about is winning it. You're going to get all these great things. And if you don't want it, listen, don't worry about it. Give us a chance. We'll get in there and we're going to get you a contract. And you're going to have job security. But more than job security, you're going to have respect and dignity and all those other wonderful things. They're on an emotional high. So the last thing they're thinking about and the last thing the union's talking about is, okay, what happens if we don't get you what you want?
Ahmed, let's follow up with you, please. In more layman terms, based on what Rick is saying, again, as a former union organizer, explain the generality of this tactic where the union may in some way mislead the employee to feel, why don't you go ahead and taste it? If you don't like it, you don't have to buy it, when it concerns joining the union and always offering that idea that they could always just get out pretty easy. Is that true?
Absolutely, Dan. And actually, I'm involved in a campaign right now that you get that sentiment, and it happens in two ways. Is the union organizer making that point to these potential members, telling them, because the employees are going to start asking questions to the union organizer, especially after management have brought us into the picture and we are presenting the facts, and then they go back to the organizer and say, how are you going to accomplish all these goals or all these promises that you make to us? And one of the things that the organizer would do real quick is telling them, listen, at the end of the day, if you don't like us, you can get rid of us. That's one of the parts. Also, even sometimes the employee themselves, trying to maybe analyze what's going on. Once they get the facts from both sides, they don't know what to do. They're confused, and they're thinking, well, why not? Let's try it, and then we get rid of it, without understanding how difficult, how hard it is to go to a decertification election.
But Dan, Ahmed, don't you, and me and you worked for me when I was an organizing director for the steel workers. But wouldn't you agree that when we were on the union side, that was the last thing we wanted to talk about was decertification. It was all about our message to them is that we have to win, and unless it the company started talking to them about it and educating them about it, that was the last thing that we wanted to talk to them about.
Absolutely, I agree. That's why I was saying that typically happens after management start going through classes and giving the facts, and those employees go back to the organizer and ask questions. How are you going to accomplish all this promise, or how are you going to do this? And that's when the organizer, I guess, in a defense mechanism and being kind of understanding the how, and I think it's actually when I was an organizer, I think if we get to that point, it was effective, because you telling people, listen, it's like a warranty. You know, you try us, you don't like it, and actually, even if you go to a store, you want to buy anything, sometimes you look at warranty, and if they tell you, listen, you buy this, you don't like it in a month, 2 months, you can return it.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, people will be buying things, more.
Well, and I also remember a lot of times when they would say, well, how are you going to get more? I know one of the things that I used to teach my organizers, and me and you've had this discussion before, was to tell them, well, wait a minute, think about it. Be rational. After a contract is negotiated, and we knew there was no guarantee that was going to happen either, but after a contract's negotiated, why would you vote for a contract if it gave you less than you have now? Exactly. I mean, come on, have common sense, and that would always get them down. But that's, once again, what happens between then and the time if you ever get to that point where you're going to ratify a contract, a lot of things can happen. A lot of things come to play where they will vote for it.
Let's go ahead, gentlemen, and just cover some of the basics real quick pertaining to the rights of employees and in respect to the National Labor Relations Act. As many lay people know, and HR professionals throughout the country, the Act actually offers the rights of employees to self-organize, to form and join a union by a showing of interest of employees to a certain percentage and then request an election. And the same is true for the process of decertification to remove the union. But again, let's go ahead and touch two scenarios here, gents. One is, if they vote in the union and there's not a contract, there's this 1-year bar before they can have another election to consider the idea of voting them out. Give me an idea in your professional experiences, what is going on in that 1-year bar in the eyes or the mentality of the union side?
Are you talking about from the union officials or from the members?
No, really from the union's perspective itself, from the officials, when they're encouraging folks to vote in the union, knowing they have that guarantee of 12 months before anything can happen.
Well, one of the things first, Dan, is that they're going to try to keep them as involved as possible. Having them on the bargaining committee, having them keeping the morale of the employees up. If they're smart. I mean, I've seen organizing or contract negotiations in the first time contract to where the rep didn't even contact the company for 6 months. But with a smart BA, business agent, or someone who's negotiating a contract, if they're smart, they're going to be in control. They're going to try to keep them motivated. They're going to try to keep them, together in the solidarity. But sometimes, and I've seen this happen also, Dan, sometimes they start talking about, well, we have to build our local now, so, we shouldn't have to wait for a contract to start collecting dues. And sometimes they'll even ask the employees who just voted the union in to start voluntarily paying union dues. So it's funny. You see all kinds of things happening within the situation, but keeping them motivated, the eyes on the target. But once again, right away, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, Matt, is that they have to look towards the day when maybe they don't get a contract in that time, and they have to start building the infrastructure of people who are the enforcers of that unit. So if down the road something happens, they're going to want to make sure that they have people to go to keep the employees in line.
And by the way, Rick, and I want to add something. When you were answering the question at the beginning, you mentioned that if they're smart and all that. Also, it depends on the union. I have no doubt that some unions are more political than others and are more interested in organizing employees than getting them a good collective bargaining, a good contract. So some unions are interested in just increasing they're all interested in increasing their membership, but some of them, I can see they're more interested in building membership for political reasons, and they don't get. And we know about those unions. There are unions that we know the jokes about, well, get a real union.
Yeah.
You know that. And so some unions are very even aggressive during collective bargaining. Others are more interested in collective bargaining. Others just in once they get the members, they get the the employees vote yes for the union during the election. They just want to get a contract as soon as possible, and so they use a lot of trying to influence the members to go one way. And one typical, and I know you remember this, is that they would tell the employees, listen, this is the first contract, we're going to do better in the second one.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I agree with you, Matt. I mean, it's not so much that and I've seen a lot of times, well, if they can keep their head over water, get close to what they're getting. The main thing is that they get in a closed shop state, they get the dues check off in the union security clause in the contract. And you're absolutely right. I mean, getting the contract is most important because that's when they get guaranteed, the dues being paid. As far as getting them a strong, contract, I mean, yeah, if they can get it, great. But it's not their main concern. Getting the dues check off and the union security clause is the most important thing. And then using those workers or using that win to go ahead and use that momentum to try to organize other workers also.
Gentlemen, it seems that we as practitioners in labor relations really have a sense for the fact that our world has changed and it continues to evolve. For instance, the idea that perhaps formal petitions are not as frequent. However, the concept of perhaps automatic recognition or recognition by the company could be more prevalent if they feel the pressure of a corporate campaign versus attacking the employees. And certainly, if we have expedited elections, or in some case in the future, which may evolve, if we have card check recognition, employees would become unionized without even a vote.